evening. It is just past 7 o'clock, so we are going to start our webinar, which is really part of a big series. So this is actually webinar 3 of a 6-part series highlighting the Farmland Commons process, introducing us to the Farmland Commons process. So if you missed some of the earlier webinars, you can go back and watch them. They are available on YouTube. They cover kind of like the story of Blue Rock Station, and then that also an introduction to the Farmers Land Trust itself. And today's focus is actually really exciting because we're talking about creating the Farmland Commons. We get a little bit more into creating the legal structure and hear from the people who have been part of this process. So my name is Denise Natoli Brooks. I'm a Central State University Extension educator, and the Blue Rock Farmland Commons happens to be in the region where I work in Southeast Ohio, and it's a property and a family that I have known for many years. So I'm very excited to bring this story to anybody who's interested in it, and also to host it on the Central State University webinar series and also on our YouTube channel. But tonight is not about me, it is about the Blue Rock Farmland Commons. So I am going to now turn it over to our speakers, and Beth, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so we are here just talking about the formation of the Commons. I'm Beth. I've been involved with Blue Rock for quite a long time. I just kind of kept showing up, and they very kindly welcomed me into the fold. And now I am on the board in the capacity of representing the Women's Peace Power Foundation. You can see some various pictures of me and my shenanigans there. Let's see, who is next to introduce themselves on the slide?
It's me. I'm Sam.
All right, it's Sam.
Hey, y'all. I'm Sam. I'm up in Stark County outside of Akron, and I've been farming adjacent for most of my life, like raising lambs as a kid and talking about sustainability issues in ag in college, and always being super conscious of my local food movement. But it wasn't until someone taught me how to prune apples that and I had to get my hands dirty, and I and my wife went out and found some land to plant our own orchard. So while those baby trees are growing up, I've been working for Ohio's organic certifier, OFA. It's the Ohio Ecological Food and Farm Association. It's way too long, don't worry about it. And I also serve on the Women Food and Agriculture Network Board, which is WFAN, another acronym that's just easier as an acronym, because I had a farmer friend across the country who actually invited me to join because she knew I'm such a nerd about all this governance and documentation stuff that she always finds so boring. But I always balance it all out with a little bit of pruning on the side, hence the pictures of all seasons of pruning. But it was actually while I was at work at OFA's conference that Christina and Annie invited me to represent WFAN on the board of the Blue Rock Farmland Commons. And it was actually on the Sunday immediately after the conference, after I got home after a full weekend of extra work duty. And we had a WFAN board meeting that night, and I got to tell Blue Rock's story, and I was just so excited. My board was so on board with giving me the approval to represent WFAN on like such a cool, special, successful land access project. And so I'm so happy to be here. And that's on to you, Naomi.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Naomi Shalley. I currently live in Baltimore, Maryland, where I work in energy engineering. So I am a former intern of Blue Rock Station. Interned there in the summer of 2016 while in school for mechanical engineering at the University of Dayton. The time I spent at Blue Rock Station and the lessons and skills I learned there with Annie and Jay became truly instrumental in helping me shape my future career and long-term goals, and really ignited a passion for agriculture and sustainability for me. Like I said, I am currently living in Baltimore, Maryland, and I have the goal to have my own goat farm one day. As you can see in the pictures on the slides, I love goats. So after my internship at Blue Rock, I remained friends with Annie and have stayed connected with her with a few different projects. One of those being the Women's Peace Power Foundation, and another now the Blue Rock Farmland Commons board. So Annie asked me to join the board of the Women's Peace Power Foundation. I was excited to join, not only to continue working with her, but supporting the mission of Women's Peace Power, helping women and girls develop skills to be more resilient, as well as working with supporting young girls in science. So as a woman in STEM, I find that incredibly valuable. So I'm very excited to be here and being on the board of the Blue Rock Farmland Commons.
All right. So next, I'll just give, we've already sort of covered this a little bit, but I'll just give a rundown of the parties involved here. So the Farm Commons is a 501c3, the function of which is to hold and steward land. And it is run by a board comprised of member nonprofits, and the farmer is also on the board. Each nonprofit has 2 members that serve on the board. The Women's Peace Power, which is Naomi and I, this was founded by Annie in Florida, and the mission is to bring peace to and empower women and girls. So Naomi already mentioned that they have additional focuses on girls and women's in STEM and in farming, and a history of advocating for imprisoned women and just essentially teaching the women skills that are important to succeed and thrive, both in their personal life and also in community with others. The next, which is SAM, is a Women's Food and Agriculture Network. This was also founded by Annie quite some time ago, with the mission to engage and connect women in finding and advancing ecologically sound, socially just, and community-based food and agricultural systems. And then the third nonprofit on the board is the Farmers Land Trust, with the mission to facilitate the transition of farmland into the care of marginalized farmers, for whom the barriers to land ownership are high. Prioritizing ecologically sound practices for managing these lands, and advising, just like legal advice, on how to use the Farmland Commons model to advance these aforementioned goals. And together we are hoping that we can create a lasting and living structure that can keep farmland out of the hands of corporations and individuals who might abuse it, and give this power back to communities and marginalized people, to return to us essentially the ability to control and produce our own food through ecologically sound and lasting means.
Thank you so much, Beth. That was so fabulous. Just to add one clarification,
Christina,
which is
you're
that
muted.
Oh, I'm on mute. Am I on mute now?
Oh no, she's not muted.
No, I'm unmuted. Okay. One clarification, which is that the Farmland Commons itself is a 501c25, and the parent member organizations are 501c3s. So just to add that one clarification.
Right. So hopefully this is the question y'all came here for, which is, what have we actually been doing besides just hanging out all day on Zoom and talking to each other? Well, we've been creating a lot of shared documents, starting on the bottom left with our shared values, which is a document that lays the groundwork of our shared intentions in becoming a part of this project. And it is way less woo-woo than that sounds, I promise. It really just means grounding ourselves and making sure we're all on the same page about this. Next are the bylaws, which are our formal document that describes the rules of how we proceed and like what governed the entity that we created when we filled out that IRS form to create the 501c25. Those first 2 documents have been created, but the next 2 are still in progress for us. The lease agreement, which is what we'll be drafting next, and that's the lease between the Farmland Commons and the farmer. And it'll be a little more extensive than a typical lease because of this quite unique nature of our project. Finally, that farm management plan, that's when we get real about how we can all put our heads together and make the best plan for the land and for the tenant. Good news, all of these documents, the Farmers Land Trust has templates for. Like, don't worry, I know you were starting to sweat. That's a lot of documents. Christina, if you want to advance to show some samples about how fun these documents look, we have not been creating these things from scratch. Could you imagine? Christy and Ian and their team provide us with these templates that we are combing through real slowly and methodically, reading, making comments, suggestions, rewriting sections, adding, deleting, so that this Farmland Commons stuff fits the situation that's happening here with the Blue Rock Station. And since I'm into trees and I'm always thinking about pruning, and I always like to think about projects like I think about tree care. And with tree care, you can't just look at a tree as it stands today. You always have to think about what that tree is going to grow into 5, 20, even hopefully 50 years. And so we know that we can make adaptations along the way. And you might not know this. This is a fun twist. Are you ready? We at the Blue Rock Farmland Commons have the option to take on other parcels of land elsewhere in Ohio. And we could find a new tenant who wants to steward that new land. And that will have their own set of unique challenges, but we can adapt everything we built, all of these documents, as long as it's IRS, federal, state, local compliant. Thank you, Mona, our lawyer, who holds our hand through all of these steps. It's really exciting times because instead of us just trying to throw together what we might know and it feels like scraps, as most farm built things are, scraps and twine, we actually have these modular pieces that fit together thanks to the Blue Rock, thanks to the Farmland Trust, the Farmers Land Trust. Plus, they give us a set of instructions, plus an active support line that gives you a real person and not a bot. So while the Blue Rock Farmland Commons is a group of people and a set of documents, it's most importantly a set of relationships and a set of obligations that we have as a group to fulfill and make this crazy idea work. So Naomi is going to give you all a tour of what those relationships and those obligations are.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was so great. Just one other clarifying thing. So currently, like where in process is that the Blue Rock Farmland Commons has not yet filed for 501c25 status, but is working on that application and working toward that. So that is to come next. So stay tuned for future webinars.
All right, yes. So we are currently in the process of becoming a 501c25, we being the Blue Rock Farmland Commons nonprofit. So once that is formed, it would be a tax-exempt title holding entity. Will hold the title to the land at Blue Rock Station. As mentioned previously, that board of the 501c25 nonprofit will be made up of representatives from the various nonprofits on the board, plus the farmers, within business support from the Farmland Trust, and from the various input from various community stakeholders as well. So that all together will make up the board of the Commons. And then following the bylaws, memorandum of understanding, and other shared agreements that we've all created together, the board of the Commons will then be responsible for all of the things you see on the right there on your screen, holding the title to the land, conveying the lease to the farmers, managing the budget and finance for the board, creating governance and various bylaws, collecting revenue on behalf of the Commons, land and ecosystem maintenance, and management and stewardship. So the last step in this process that we are currently moving into at this point is officially transferring the land title from private landowner to the nonprofit Blue Rock Farmland Commons entity. So we're currently at this step. Annie and Jay are choosing to sell their farm via a bargain sale, and we are working to raise funds to complete this purchase and secure the land in perpetuity in the community commons ownership. Once the funds are raised to purchase the land, it will come into the Farmers Land Trust 501c3 before being transferred to the Blue Rock Farmland Commons entity, with the bylaws and restrictions in place on the land use that we created as the board, with those in place to ensure the land is solely used for purposes of the Farmland Commons.
Thank you so much, Naomi. That was so fabulous. Before we get into open conversation and discussion with the people who are here, I wondered if we could go backwards a little bit. And now that you all have given the arc of the process and how we've gotten here and all the steps, and come back to this page just because this is what took us so very long. And I wonder if we can all take turns kind of sharing what this actual process was like. And I think the reason that I'm drawn to elaborate and share on this further is because of how many people all the time we're always hearing say, I wish me and my friends could all go buy a piece of farm and live together happily ever after and farm, or like, I wish I could find a community to farm with. And those dreams and aspirations are so real and they're so meaningful, but the practicality of how to make it work within the legal paradigm and the societal structures that we live within are, as you put so eloquently, Sam, just not as beautiful and cool as we all make it sound. Like, I think it'd be interesting for people to hear what it was actually like to go through each of these documents and what it actually looked like in practice for this group. So if you all want to take turns sharing about that, and I guess I'll just Sam, do you want to start?
Sure. For me, it just felt like a research project wrapped up with a learning project of it's kind of teaching me and I'm responding to it at the same time. And it's a really fun way to read and really engage with what you're reading by just commenting and knowing that a group is coming in behind you and commenting along with you and trying to make the most sense of these templates that could be applied anywhere. How do we make them apply to us?
I will add on to that as well in terms of the ease of use of the process, I suppose, with the templates and everything. I have not had any experience doing anything like this before, and I was certainly a little intimidated when first hearing, okay, like, would you like to be a part of the board? We're going to be creating all these documents and everything. I was like, whoa, okay, how do I know how to do that? I don't have legal experience with this, so certainly having these templates in place and working with Ian and Christina through the full process, it made everything really easy, really straightforward, and was able to kind of let us focus on, I guess, more of the specifics of what we wanted to include for Blue Rock itself. And it was overall a very straightforward process and definitely not nearly as intimidating as I thought it might be at first.
I never would have known that you were intimidated. You did awesome the whole time. No,
Thank you.
This is news. This is surprising to me. Okay. Beth, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, no, I think that if I was in the position of wanting to do this but not necessarily knowing how, I definitely don't have any legal experience. I would have been completely lost if it weren't for all the work that has already been done by Christina and Ian. And then we were also very fortunate that we actually have someone on our board who has a lot of legal experience, who could read through all of these documents and kind of proof it for us and make sure that things were correct. But yeah, if we didn't have all of that help with us, it would have been way more complicated than it actually ended up being. So I think that was really fortunate. But it has been really fascinating learning about all of these processes, definitely.
Thank you. Yeah, the in-state attorney is so crucial just because each state has different laws and, we work nationally and finding out what those specific laws are to that state that we're working in. To have that in-state attorney is so crucial. So yeah, I feel like we're all like, thank you, Mona. Shout out to Mona again. Yeah, and I guess just for those of us, those listening here, the practice really was to schedule meetings and go line by line through documents together, to work offline on our own time, which I guess is still on the internet, just not on a meeting, online, but not on a meeting, doing Google Doc comments and suggestions and working through things that way. I'll share that, from doing several of these around the country, what was unique about this group is that every single person wanted to be involved in every single step. And that's such a beautiful way to include everyone. And so, yeah, it did take a little bit longer, but then everyone's voice was heard. And I think that's such a great way to really embed in all of those shared values and principles. And I guess to that, I guess I'm just going to ask, like, if anyone wants to share any memory or recollection or like something that you would want to reflect on about how, if and when conflict arose and how that was worked through, because that's a question that people very often ask and wonder about, like how often that happens or how it's handled. And I just wonder if you all would want to share it all about any time that differing views came up or how that was handled.
I can go first again. I really enjoyed the process of bringing up conflicting ideas within the group because they led to such generative conversations. I think something that we did come back to and center ourselves on either individually or maybe we did it kind of as a group, but like we're all in this for the benefit of Blue Rock and these new farmland tenants. And that was just such an anchoring thing through any kind of, well, I think this is better and you think that is better. And let's take the pros and cons of both of those and then let's see what's best for Blue Rock. And that conflict made the next conflict even safer and the next conflict even more gentle because such good things came out of them. Just put a shiny, shiny, glittery light on it.
Yeah, I feel almost as if we were centering our shared values that we developed first into the process of creating the bylaws and the other documents that we created. So just like Sam said, going back to those shared values and going back to what is really the focus of what we're here to do, benefit Blue Rock Station and benefit the new tenants of the land.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like although there might have been differing ideas on like small segments of how to get there, we really did have such a passionate shared goal that while there was certainly discussion, I didn't feel like there was ever really like conflict. Does that make sense? Like,
you're right. I was probably being dramatic.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like everything worked really organically, especially with everyone's, differing experiences and knowledge bases, combining that, I think we communicated really well.
Totally. Yes. Thank you so much. I think too, just going back to the slide to really emphasize something that Naomi shared is that shared values document that is the very first step of this process is not a legally binding document, is not needed to file for state incorporation or create a farmland commons or 501c25 entity, but it's something that we've included in the process because it does do that very thing so well, which is bring everyone together around this shared idea and to coalesce around the same values and principles to then make the creation of those following documents much easier and smoother because we've already hashed all of these things out in a lower stakes arena than when we move to the bylaws and the lease and so forth. So yeah. Does anyone else have any other reflections they want to share before I move on? So next I wondered if, because I know Naomi and Beth, you both are on the farm advisory board that Annie shared about in a previous session. And so, your step into this was a little bit different in you came from that farm advisory board first to then, finding out about the Farmers Land Trust and the Farmland Commons from Annie in that way before, we even were ready to move forward with a project. And so I guess if you guys wanted to share it all, like your memories of conversation in the process of even thinking about this as a new idea, and then fast forward to like here we are talking about this thing that is already a state incorporated entity, and like your process of stepping from farm and it just being this idea that Annie shares about and that you all have meetings about to then being in it. Taking that leap is what I think a lot of people are scared to do, and like you guys did that?
Well, my goal with being on the advisory board, Annie is a dear friend of mine, and I have always really wanted to support her. And the farm is a special place, and I wanted to, safeguard that. And so for me, it was relatively simple. Once we knew that that Annie and Jay, because they had never really planned to leave the farm, and then life circumstances kind of forced their hand. So once they had realized that, they were going to have to leave, and then Annie found you, Christina and Ian, it was, for me, a pretty simple transition of thought, to be like, all right, I've been advising, Annie as best as I can on the board for the farm, and now I can continue to help protect and steward that special place, and make this transition as comfortable as possible for Annie by serving on the board for the Commons. So, yeah.
I will say I was a little hesitant at first, going through, when I first heard about the Farmers Land Trust, just because it was almost, I guess I'll say maybe it seemed too good to be true kind of thing. Seemed like just this great opportunity that just so aligned with everything that Blue Rock Station, so many of the core values that have been, taught in that space. But once we learned more about it and talked with Ian and Christina, and it, once I learned more about it, it just made so much sense. It was like, this is the natural progression that this land and this space should take. Once I kind of stretched my mind a little bit beyond the traditional, okay, one person is going to take the land next kind of thinking, this makes so much sense for the community in that space, everybody coming together, working together to build our shared values and go through this whole process, working with the community, things like that. It's what could be a more perfect way for Blue Rock Station to continue on into the future.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Beth and Naomi, for sharing that. That is so beautiful. Okay, I have one more question before we move into the question and answer session. And this one, I was going to go back and ask Sam. So, one of these process documents was this memorandum of understanding between the three nonprofits that are those member organizations coming together to create this sub-entity of the Farmland Commons. And I wonder if you could share like what it was like pitching this idea to your board. Like, were they like, this sounds crazy, this sounds like too much time, this sounds like too much risk, this sounds like it's going to take too much capacity? I remember you and I shared some emails back and forth around questions that they had and talking through some things. But if you could give us like that bird's eye view, like look under the hood, fly on the wall, like what was it like in those board meetings?
As Naomi said, everyone thinks it just sounds too good to be true. So that's where the source of a lot of the questions come from. The pitch was pretty easy. I had lots, I wanted to incorporate the story. There's such great stories around Blue Rock. And even the way my story intersects with Blue Rock, it feels, I feel the specialness, even though I've had such little contact with the actual location, but there's some real magic happening around what's happening with this project. And the WFAN board is full of young women, either farmers or farm supporters. So they all understood the needs for land access, the needs for unique transfer options, and all the ideation and all the things that we've tried as a collective of nonprofits and people who care about land access and farmland stewardship across the country. They get it. And so when I knew who I was talking to also, and I knew I could deliver that pitch right to where their heart was, which was it's working. This project is working. This project is getting a new tenant onto some land that deserves a new strong steward. And so they were just as excited as I was in the end.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Beth, Naomi, Sam, do you all have anything else you want to share before we open it up to thoughts and questions from everyone else? No? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for attending and listening to what we have to share. And I wonder, Ian, would you like to say anything before we open it up to thoughts and questions from everyone else?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. This is really beautiful to witness and be part of on this level. But yeah, I guess I just share the emphasis on what's been said and expand that the templates that have been referenced are open source resources for all to use. There are templates on our website. There's a page of templates. There's a page that articulates the process that is being described here. And they're available for everyone to use, learn from, evolve into what they want for themselves. And really, they're all just starting points. They're built with a national context, so they're not localized to state, they're not localized to place, but they're really a starting point for people to engage in different ways. So take a look at those. Also on our website, and more specific to everyone here and other specific communities around the country, is that as these farmland commons come together, those template documents are localized to place and community by the people, just as being described here. And then those specific farmland commons documents are on our website on that farmland commons page. So they then become great, unique examples tied to place and how diversely unique one farmland commons can be to the next. So it's really great learning to both look at the templates and look at how each community has used those to create the structure and the agreements that fit them.
Thank you. And so, yeah, we are currently raising money to purchase and acquire Blue Rock Station at a discounted bargain sale price, and would be super grateful for any and all contributions to that. And yeah, now we'll open it up to questions, comments from attendees. Tara, would you like to go first? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to, thanks for having me. I'm actually, just a side note, I'm originally from Ohio, but living in Utah now. That's where I call home. So actually outside of Akron, Cuyahoga Falls is my hometown. So this kind of hits home for me. But I'm still trying to understand, I'm getting pretty close to understanding how everything fits together. And so is there a parent, like is the Blue Rock Farmlands Commons, is it nestled in a larger 501c3?
So there's 3 parents here.
There's 3.
In your
Okay.
context, so it's each of the 501c3s, Women's Power Foundation, WFAN, and the Farmers Land Trust are each equal co-parents of the Blue Rock Farmland Commons.
Got it. And so, the other type of farmland commons is it could just be one nonprofit, one 501c3 that is the overriding parent. I think that's the model I'm going to be going with. And so that's why I'm just trying to make sure I understand the difference. Okay.
Correct. So that 3 or more parents is a 501c25. One parent is a 501c2.
Okay.
So they're very similar nonprofit structures, but that's the primary difference, is the number of parents.
Okay. And then have you folks worked with the structure much of the 501c2? Like, is there, like, this is a great model for the C25 for me. And if there's anyone you can recommend that I could look at in the C2 model would be great.
Yeah, when we first started working on this commons-based approach, that was the model that we were mostly working with and towards, was that 501c2. And really the reason that we have moved away from that and more into and toward the 501c25 is because Our work is all based in community and in collaboration, and those are values and principles that are important to us. And to really share power with and amongst community, it needs to be embedded in the ownership structure and the legal structure in a more equitable power sharing way. And so these three nonprofits coming together to own land equally is a way to really build in collaboration and relationships in a more meaningful, in a way that makes it into an action versus a statement. And another reason would be that nonprofits come and go, and even the best laid plans don't work out. And so with multiple nonprofits there to create this sub-entity, and with the flexibility that the 501c25 offers in allowing some nonprofits to step away and others to be added over time as needed, or some to fold and the others to find new ones to replace it, it just gives that long-term sustainability and resilience a new meaning when we're talking about land stewardship. It's like, another reason would be that access to network and capital and resources that maybe just one nonprofit has, but then amplify that by three. And then that's a different game too, that you're playing now for that land and that farmer.
And one thing I was wondering about is if you start off as a C2, can you add other nonprofits later on?
We're going to need to add this to our frequently asked questions page. I feel like we get asked this all the time. No. They are completely different entities.
Okay.
So you'd have to shut one down to then start the other. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I had a feeling that was the going to be the answer, and it's good to know, because one thing I'm thinking is that the C2 might actually be a faster setup to move land, at least in Utah and where I'm at, to move land into a nonprofit, like to get it decommodified instead of having multiple organizations come together. But I'm still something I'm thinking about and exploring.
I'd share too that the first step, and one of the slides, like the movement of land slide depicted this, but the first step in decommodifying land is moving it from private ownership into nonprofit ownership in a 501c3 structure. So if there's a 501c3 that exists now in your community, that would be part of either creating a 501c2 or a 501c25, the first step in either case is to move the land from private ownership into that 501c3. So you could do that, and it could sit in the 501c3 for a year, 5 years, whatever the right amount of time is, but that's where it has to go first anyways. So taking that step, moves it out of private ownership, moves it into nonprofit, a lease could be put in place and things could operate, and then the C2 or the C25 could be developed from there, and then it could transfer in.
Okay, that's great to know, because the 501, the parent is almost created, almost there. So, okay, great. That's really good to know.
I'd share one other benefit to the 501c25 that we see too is that different nonprofits, 501c3s, have their experience and specialty and focus, and the collaboration is beneficial, and that's been said. But just to pull that out a little further is that what we're describing here is a land holding model, and there's certain processes and practices that land trusts, conservation and community land trusts, follow when they're taking ownership of land, owning land, stewarding land, leasing land out, that are really they've been learned. Conservation land trusts for 140 years now have helped develop that and are supported by the Land Trust Alliance. So there's a great body of experience and skills and a process to follow from land trusts in holding land, leasing land out. But then on the same regard, many land trusts are not connected to community or food systems or agriculture or equitably governed or, different components to them. So as a standalone entity, a land trust may not be the best, single holding structure, we would argue, but their skills and experience and their model of how they operate is really essential in thinking about owning land and leasing land out. So, really important, but then the same could be said for local community nonprofits or food systems nonprofits or agriculture nonprofits that, they're more tied to the people and the land and the community and have a better understanding of what's needed on the land, the relationships being held, but they may not have much, if any, experience in acquiring and holding land, leasing land out, long-term stewardship, management of that land. So the benefits of each nonprofit bringing their skills, experience, and passion together creates a better whole.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. Can I ask one more question, or I don't want to take up all the time?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If so, of the three nonprofits that are involved, is it possible to add then another piece of property if they wanted to? Where would that fit in? So right now, the property that I steward is actually 4 parcels, and we'd like to start with one, decommodifying one parcel. Is there a structure that you're familiar with to then add? This is something we'd actually like to see more properties added, even in our valley. And so is that possible? Am I just crazy? Is that just too optimistic?
Yeah, so each Farmland Commons is actually being created to hold more than one parcel. So instead of just focusing on one parcel of farmland or one farm organism, it is supposed to hold multiple farms, a minimum hopefully of 4, maximum around 12. And this hope would be that they're being created within food shed regions, so always within state lines, but in a geographic focus of community that exists and supplies its food needs. And then parcels are brought into that Farmland Commons in that geographic area over time, but starting with one. So
starting with
with one.
Okay. Great. That gives me a lot to think about.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most exciting things about this model is that you can bring other, you can grow the community essentially. I think it's really exciting.
And Xavion, I'm so glad to see that you made it too. If you have any questions, totally love to hear from you. If anybody else has any thoughts or questions or reflections.
Thank you so much. I'm just listening in. Thank you.
So as I listen to this wonderful conversation, it makes me excited to be part of the story and that little bit that I'm part of. It's also just exciting to know that this is happening in the region, the county that I live in. So very, very exciting. I also realize in my excitement and the network building that I've done with the people in the group here that I don't think we ever had Christina or Ian introduce themselves this evening. We just started referring to them as Christina and Ian, but to capture that at least somewhere in our hour together, would the two of you mind actually introducing yourself? And I apologize for the delay in realizing that didn't happen.
Oh no, I didn't even think, it didn't even occur to me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Christina. I live in Middle Tennessee. My partner and I steward 70 acres of land, and I am the co-founder, co-executive director of the Farmers Land Trust.
And I'm Ian McSweeney. I live in southern New Hampshire. I'm the other co-founder, co-executive director of the Farmers Land Trust. I for 2.5 decades have worked in philanthropy, nonprofit work, towards farmland conservation, farmland transitions, mainly towards community equity, community ownership models, mainly towards regenerative agriculture practices, and yeah, co-founded this common structure with Christina and others a handful of years ago, and just honored to be here and to be creating this with people and communities around the country.
And so our next session in this series is going to focus on the next generation steward vetting and selection and application process. And then after that, the next one will be the next generation steward sharing their perspective on going through that process and then now to living on the land and working through this new model with all of us. And so, yeah, Denise, thank you so much for hosting us for this webinar series. It's been so informative and so helpful, and so grateful to have this as a recorded resource and tool for others in the future. So grateful.
It has been a really fitting just partnership with what Central State University Extension is about too. We are the 1890 land grant in Ohio, which our focus is on serving underserved populations, but farmers as a big part of that. And land access is certainly one of the barriers that we work with in our farmers, both in rural, suburban, and urban spaces all the time, as we are really working hard to provide education to aspiring farmers and beginning farmers, especially farmers interested in specialty crops and growing food for people, building those local food sheds. We really do see the possibility of future partnership to connect our new farmers with land that's created through commons. So this is a really fitting partnership that makes a lot of sense. If you don't have those next sessions on your calendar, these are when they occur. The registration is through that Central State University Extension program portal. And we would love to have you on that call. You also did get an email from me today if you registered for the webinar that has the link to the YouTube playlist where all of the webinars are housed. So 2 are already up. This one today that we're recording will be put up there in the next couple weeks and so on and so on. So we can really not just capture this webinar series live, but so it can be a resource for all of us going forward. So thank you guys too for the partnership. And I'm very impressed by hearing the story and the people involved all the time. It is inspirational. So I look forward to the other things that we get to do together to share this story.
Can I ask one? One more? And so when Blue Rock is purchased, which parent company will it go into first before the Farmland Commons? Like, how did you decide that? Or have you not, do you thumb wrestle? Like, what's the process to decide?
Yeah, so in most Farmland Commons, we as the Farmers Land Trust are one of the parent 501c3s that are helping to create this structure, and we are set up like a land trust. And so we utilize Land Trust Alliance standards and best practices. And because of that, we are ready and able to take in land and do the due diligence needed and collect all the data and reporting, and then have this system set up to support holding land, the carrying of land, the future process of moving it into the Farmland Commons and the monitoring, et cetera. So we are also the ones in agreement with the current landowners, Annie and Jay, for the purchase of their land. And so we, the Farmers Land Trust, will take in the land in this case. In other cases where we are not one of the parent 501c3s, there's typically an aligned relationship that already exists between landowner and nonprofit that make it the obvious choice for bringing land in. Or if there was another land trust involved, that would be the next obvious choice because they are set up to take in land donations.
Okay, got it. Just my one heartwarming story. I was just at the Utah Food and Farm Conference this past weekend, and this is a new topic in Utah. It's pretty exciting. It's a small conference of mostly regenerative land stewards, farmers, biodynamics. It's a pretty actually diverse group, I think, for Utah. And so it's pretty exciting to just talk about it and hear folks just being really interested and curious about it, because I don't think that's been the case in Utah in the past. So
we
nice
have been
work.
Hearing a lot from people in Utah.
Well, that's really great to hear, because I talk about it as much as there are a few of us that are really, I think, driving the point, and really there isn't an example in Utah yet, and I'm hoping to be the first. So stay tuned. We'll see.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh, thanks
thank
for
you
sharing
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think this is how we learn together too, by hearing these stories across the nation, and see how things are happening, but also, with that community connection piece, as we build networks, we want to spend time like learning from each other, but also seeing each other, visiting each other, experiencing these different places and how things are working. And that's also a beautiful part of this work. Like Tara, I'm drawn to your story not only because, but because I went to school in Utah. I lived there a long time. And now to hear that this farm conference that you just talked about is happening is really exciting. And hopefully there will be an example in Ohio of, this amazing farmland transition process before we know it. So yeah, so whether you are a presenter tonight or, signed on to listen and learn, everybody here is welcome to be a presenter and share and be part of this building community. I appreciate you all for being here this evening. I hope you'll join us again, spread the word that we're talking about this stuff. And be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Bye.